welcome along to the continuation of Portfolio Landlords Week here on Property Tribes. We're on location at the Property Investor Show. Great place to meet commentators on this topic, and I'm very pleased now to come along to the stand of Mortgages for Business, and I'm joined by Managing Director Steve. Steve, as far as portfolio landlords are concerned, the kind of differences for them in terms of regulation, tax, finance, they're really widening out from smaller landlords, aren't they? Yeah. I think, the game is changing for portfolio landlords.
It is. I mean, ever since the PRA came in with those new rules and defined the portfolio landlord as anyone really with 4 or more mortgaged properties. So the effect that that's had is that those landlords now looking for finance, lenders are now looking at their background portfolio, having to make sure they're not too heavily geared, factoring in the gearing, having a look at the income across the portfolio, and they're factoring that in when looking at the next mortgage application now.
And they have to produce a lot more documentation as well when they're going for finance, don't they?
They do, yeah. I mean, we're saying to all our landlords, and especially those that now are defined as portfolio landlords, is to make sure that, yes, they have a very professional spreadsheet detailing the values, the rents, the current finance arrangements on those properties, making sure that their tax affairs are up to date and that they can easily provide copies of their tax returns. And some lenders are now looking for portfolio landlords to provide business plans and even cash flow forecasts. But that's something that, hopefully those professional landlords have a decent broker on board that can help them with the business plan and the cash flow forecast in particular.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the business plan, because in some of the other interviews that we've been doing, we've been talking about how important it is to have a goal and something very specific in mind of what you want to achieve through being a portfolio landlord. But what I'd like to put to you, Steve, and I'm speaking from my experience of being a portfolio landlord of 15 years, my goal has actually changed since when I started out.
And that's not unusual.
And it's really important to keep auditing the portfolio, auditing your goal, and making sure that if it is changing, you need to fine-tune to just keep on track.
Yeah, I mean, lenders are going to ask you at the time of application on what your current business plan is. So whether your strategy was different in the past shouldn't really matter. It's what it is now and then what you're looking to do in the future. So, it's what type of property that you tend to do, what region, what area you're looking to invest in, whether you go for a certain type of tenant, certain yield, certain levels of yielding properties. So yes, but it's looking at what your current strategy is and then what it's going to look like in 3 to 5 years' time at the time you're applying for the finance.
Indeed. Now, I guess that between, say, 2000, 2010, I think we had a golden era for portfolio landlords. Yeah. Certainly in terms of access to finance, yes. How rising house prices helped to grow more quickly as well. I think with the PRA, with the stagnating Brexit market, it is actually more challenging for landlords to grow now, and maybe we won't see those kind of super portfolio landlords that we've seen in the past with 100, 500, 1,000 properties.
I slightly disagree. I mean, yes, it's slightly harder to get finance now, but there's quite a competitive and robust mortgage market still out there. I don't believe some of the press articles about funding lines closing down. There is plenty of competition, especially at that more specialist end of the buy-to-let market. And so if landlords, yes, they are becoming more professional, but those that are treated as a proper professional business can get access to finance, and we're seeing landlords very active, growing portfolios, maybe looking at different parts of the country now where yields are better. But no, there are landlords that are still growing and got those sort of size portfolios.
That's good to know. I mean, what sort of strategies do you think work really well in the current market conditions? Because I hear of kind of developers going from buy to sell to actually buy to hold, and yes. Also, of course, we've got mixed use, semi-commercial. There are still niches where landlords can really raise their game just from single occupancy buy-to-let.
Yes, and lenders are starting to realise that as well, and because it's such a competitive mortgage market now, some of the newer lenders are looking at what their unique selling points are going to be with regard to criteria. So we've got more lenders now looking at those high yielding properties that landlords are after. Holiday lets are suddenly very popular, so that's a way of landlords getting around some of the new tax rules. Freehold blocks of flats, we've got more lenders looking at that type of investment. flats above commercial, those sort of things. So you know, there's still an active market among lenders, and lenders are now opening their eyes, realising that the landlord has become more professional, and therefore going after slightly more complex property scenarios. But yeah, there's plenty of options out there for them now.
What would you say is the mindset of a portfolio landlord? Obviously, we've talked a lot about how they're more professional, they treat it as a business. Do you think that they're always striving to, go to that next stage, keep pushing forwards? I think their mindset's probably a lot more kind of entrepreneurial than maybe just a small landlord that's happy with 3 properties.
Yeah, it's correct. The more professional the landlord, yes, you're right. They take a sensible approach. They understand the tax changes. They understand, what they need to do to mitigate some of that extra cost. But yeah, we've seen a massive change from the amateur landlord to the whole market moving to that more professional style, where they know what they're doing, where all their tax affairs are up to date, where they can produce a lot of supporting information at the beginning of a mortgage application. And the more organised they are, it shows the professionalism of that landlord, and therefore it's a lot more straightforward when they come to applying for finance.
Well, that's very good to hear, because it means that standards are improving.
Yeah, that's a good thing, isn't it?
It's a good thing, and ultimately tenants will benefit from more professional landlords. Right. And they are our clients, and they're very, very important to landlords. Finally, Steve, what would you say would be your number 1 tip to somebody that's watching this, maybe got 2 or 3 properties, has an ambition to grow a much bigger portfolio? What would be your number 1 tip?
Do your research. Get associated to some of the great sort of landlord portal and forums out there on the internet. Some of the landlord associations, obviously Property Tribes is a great one to look at. But also, once you've done your research, make sure that you're organised on your paperwork. If you're looking to apply for finance, then make sure you've got your tax affairs up to date, as I said, that you can produce copies of your tax returns, details of your portfolio, and a proper strategy for the next 3-5 years. That's what lenders are looking for.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining me on Portfolio Landlords Week, and we will be working more closely with mortgages for business in the future. So Steve, this is just an introductory chat really, because we're going to be hearing from you a lot more in the future. And thank you very much for being part of this themed week of content for Portfolio Landlords.
Pleasure. Thank you.
It's going to continue, so stay tuned.